So let me start by telling you a story about leadership development and why it's so strategic and why it's so important. It actually comes from China, from a man by the name of Ying Kai. He wrote the book T for T. And he and his wife were church planters, and so they went to this area of China that demographically had about 20 million people in a relatively small geographic area. And he felt that God wanted him to go there and begin to share the gospel with people and to start a church, but he had a burden not just to reach a few of them. His passion was, how do I reach all 20 million people? Man of faith. This guy had the gift of evangelism. It's, from what I understand, it was not uncommon that on a given day he would go out and in one day see 40 people give their life to Christ. That's amazing. Could you imagine that? I mean, I'd be like, yes, that's incredible. And obviously he was encouraged with that kind of responsiveness to the gospel. The problem is day after day of doing this, he just realized we're not going to even make a dent. Even though we're seeing that kind of response, he said to reach 20 million people, we're never going to get there. He did the math. 40 people a day, 365 days a year. You know how many lifetimes or how long it would take to do that? 1,400 years of 40 people a day to reach 20 million people. So he just got before the Lord, Lord, what do I do? How are we going to reach 20 million people? It's just not even mathematically possible. Even if we go to 100 people a day, it's just not going to happen. And so he spent some time just kind of pouring out his heart in prayer and seeking God. And what God put on his heart is a very simple but unbelievably powerful principle in the scriptures. And we see it modeled time and again. And the simple word for it is multiplication. If you go out and in a year lead one person to Christ, and at the end of that year, through a year of discipleship, through a year of teaching them how to grow as a Christian, how to grow in their faith, how to come alongside them as they come through the various character challenges as they're leaving their old lifestyle, entering into the new, as you teach them to understand what the gospel is, and in their excitement, be able to share that with their friends. And at the end of the year, if that person then could lead someone to Christ, well, now you've got two. Not quite the number that Ying Kai has, do you? If you were to continue that process unbroken, that process would yield over 6 billion people in 34 years, if that process were to go unbroken. That's the power of multiplication. And so what he understood is now obviously that chain is never going to continue to go unbroken. It doesn't happen that way. But the principle of not only seeing converts, but seeing those converts grow up to the point where they then can enter into leadership. They can enter into God using them to influence the lives of others was the big aha for him.